Today's COVID update is brought to you by Fulltech Systems, your technology center, where you'll come for the price but stay for the service.
And welcome back to Open Your Eyes this morning. We're moving into our first discussion with two doctors joining us from the international arena. We have Dr. Kanwalpreet Sodhi, a critical care physician, and Dr. Asina Jahan Lopa, head of the intensive care unit at the MH Samarita Hospital and Medical College. Doctors, good morning, and thank you for joining us this morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
And a greeting from India.
Greetings from Bangladesh.
Yes. And we appreciate you taking the time to be able to talk with us this morning. We want to say a big thank you to our good friend Dr. Hidalgo for putting us in touch.
It's a pleasure to be.
Yeah.
So we want to move into the discussion. We know that there is such a tragic situation unfolding in India at this present moment, and we would definitely like to hear your background and your analysis of what is happening on the ground, and to basically explicate where it is that India needs to go in order to grapple with the coronavirus pandemic. So I want to start with Dr. Sodhi. What has it been like on the grounds in India at this present moment?
Actually, what has been shown, what is being percolated around, into the media, into the scientific committees and everywhere, the situation is not so grim. What is being protected around the world? I'm a critical care physician working as a task force on the ground, and I would like to highlight few things which are not so grim as the media across the globe is showing. We all are aware, yes, COVID pandemic is spreading its wings across the world with all its might. Representing India on this forum, at this platform, let me talk about the numbers first. We all know the rise in number of cases has been exponential in the second, what is being projected as the second wave of corona pandemic in India. But despite being the second most populated country in the world, I still believe numbers are not so alarming, right? Let me talk about the exact numbers. As of the 11th May press release, just done an hour back by the government of India, we had 22 million total cases as of now, of which 19 million have recovered. And we only 16.16% active cases. That goes around 0.4 million cases. And the case fatality rate, if we talk about the case fatality rate, in India, the case fatality rate is only 1.09%, which is, I only like to highlight that this is much less than the global figure. So, the first and foremost thing I want to bring out, sitting at this, that the picture is not so grim. It's really saddening to see, yes, it has really grappled. The second wave is much more ferocious than the first wave. But certainly, don't be so sad around, and we need to look at the positive aspects of what is being done by our government. I'd like to, in the later half of this talk, I'd like to highlight what is being done. But yes, looking at the population of the country, still I believe that despite having a very, very poor primary healthcare setups and the number of tertiary healthcare setups being far less. And this is the reason the hospital bed numbers are much lesser. But we are fighting a battle, and I know we are going to win over it.
That's such a critical point that you are introducing there, ensuring that the population size of India is put into perspective in this conversation. So when we talk about these big numbers, we have to start with the baseline number, which is the sheer size of your population. Let's bring Dr. Sodhi in early and talk a bit about the second wave itself and some of the lessons that perhaps the rest of the world can learn to prevent entering into a second wave like this?
Well, if we go by the second wave, actually, we were not very prepared for the second wave itself. When the first wave gone, we were just, the public awareness is not so much, which should not have happened. And we should have been more aware of the COVID appropriate behavior. We should have followed that, which was not being followed at the public level. Because of the poverty we have in our country, the literacy level is not so high in the general population. So people need to work, go out and move ahead. So they were not following the COVID appropriate behavior. The isolation was not being, was not actually mandatory. The masks were not appropriately put in, and social distancing was, especially in the rural population, this was not being seen because of the lack of the education part. So this was a reason which might have actually led to the second wave as. And the preparedness of the government right at this moment, I'll say in the last 1 month, whatever we have learned, that is much more what was 6 months back. So we are now at a better place. Because as you're showing on the media, this your screens also, the rallies being held, we cannot just, we could not avoid it because of the political pressure. The religious, because of being a multi-religion country, the religious festivals were not avoided, yes. But now the government is managing it at a far, far better level than what should have been done actually a month prior, being done right now. But now the conditions are better controlled.
Dr. Lopa, can you speak to us about the situation in Bangladesh? We've seen that from the onset of the pandemic last year, Bangladesh has recorded approximately 772,000 plus cases. And we've seen that there was a spike in early April in Bangladesh, but there has been a consistent decline thus far. What has the government implemented to curb that spike?
Thank you for inviting me in this platform. Actually, Bangladesh is the third most affected country in South Asia after India and Pakistan. And I want to say one thing that Dr. Sodhi said, that the population, it's a very big factor, I think. Bangladesh is a country of total population of 163 million people. But I must say that the first wave was sudden, came to us, and we were not so much prepared. But when the second wave came, actually, the thing is that in the first week of April, it was in like a peak, but the situation is getting better by mid-May, because I must say that our government from the 5th May, our country is totally announced completely lockdown from April 5th. So as per the order of the government, all government, semi-government, autonomous and private office should be closed. It's also the ban also applicable for airports, land ports. So I must say that the cases are reducing, and I also work in a COVID ICU. COVID ICU, and we have a non-COVID also, but almost the cases are reducing very fast. I think that very rapidly. In my ICU now we have only 2 patients, and we have a 25-bedded ICU. So I must say this lockdown actually is a very good decision of our government. So now the patients we are getting, that's a post-COVID. Most of the post-COVID patients are coming to us. So I think that the second wave, we actually managed better than the first wave. And I must say that our neighbor country, Bangladesh, began its vaccination drive in February by giving the Oxford AstraZeneca COVID-19 vaccine, which is prepared by the Serum Institute of India. And a total 8.9 million vaccine doses have been administered. And about 5.8 million people have received their first dose, while 3.1 million have been fully vaccinated. So I must say that this vaccination program and also this lockdown, both things actually worked in our country.
Yeah.
And I must say that government's very rapid initiative in increasing the ICU beds and also isolation centers, that also worked very good. And we can say that we are working in a very good environment than the previous year.
And I think why the second wave in these particular countries garners so much attention is because when we saw the rollout of the vaccination globally, everyone assumed it was the beginning of the end. And that triggers a lot of relaxation in what we were normally doing in preventative measures. When you talk about lessons learned and looking back, especially when it comes to easing restrictions, is it possible that sometimes we may open up back countries too soon and allow for second waves, even though vaccinations are being rolled out? Let's have
Dr. Sodhi?
Yeah.
This question is for me.
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. Basically, see, certainly in India, the vaccination drive was launched on 16th of January 2021, wherein at the first go, the healthcare workers were basically vaccinated and followed by the frontline workers, including the police, the frontline workers, all the frontline workers. And thereafter, like from 1st of May, the general population aged more than 18 years is now under the vaccination drive. You're right when you say that, yes, once you get the vaccination, you put down your guards and you have a false sense of like, yes, you are protected. So you do put your guns down. But since not many people had been vaccinated till that time, so the question, like, just because having a false feeling that yes, you are protected, so that might not have actually led to wave. But certainly now I think in another 30 days we'll have a better protection and the infectivity rates will surely go down. The main reason why I like to put in that the second wave happened is mostly because of the rallies and the political religious functions.
Yeah.
They were certainly a precipitating factor. I'll not say the cause, but they were the precipitating factors.
Yeah, there were mass gatherings that were taking place, both for political processes and also for religious festivities.
They are more related to the religious. The religious factors, because we are a multi-religion country.
Yeah.
The secularism is there. So we cannot put a hold on the religious ceremonies. So that was a major reason which might have led.
Yeah.
And if about the lockdown, the country as such did not undergo a nationwide lockdown. But what the government did this time was that the districts, the specific states and the districts wherein there was the high positivity rate, said the containment areas were made there. And this tried to decrease the infectivity.
Okay.
But the major thing which led to second wave might be the UK strains, the South African strains, which were not initially there. And they are the mutant strains which have a very high R factor and might have led to increased infectivity. And we are here where we are.
I was going to ask about that, about specific variants that have been identified. There are, I believe, 2 variants identified in India that are highly transmissible, not necessarily causing severe COVID, but highly transmissible. Can you tell us a bit more about that?
There are certain reasons, actually 60 have more than 10% case positivity rate. And they have been identified, like mainly the Maharashtra, the Madhya Pradesh, Jharkhand. They all are the high, Delhi is one of them. With a very high positivity rate. And what has been done is that they have been it has been named as a containment zone, but the specific areas, the specific districts have been identified and absolute lockdown has been put in those areas. And that is where, which is going to actually hold the things, because we cannot, being such a huge country, we cannot put a nationwide lockdown as we had done almost an year back. For 21 days we had been locked down. So the economic crisis is also huge.
Yes.
Right? So the containment zones have been made and they are making a difference. Like even in our city, I belong to Punjab. Ludhiana is the industrial hub of Punjab, and we have all containment zones. We have around 5 containment zones. They're in a particular area with a very high positivity rate has been made as a containment zone, and no to and fro movement is allowed in that area. So this is what is being practiced these days, and the government this initiative actually has put a halt on the infection rates.
Dr. Sode, I understand that there is a shortage of vaccines in India at this present moment, and we know globally for India to be the vaccine factory of the world. Considering that and the statement that has come from the Chief Executive Officer of the Serum Institute of India, Adar Panwala, what has it been like, considering that there will continue to be a crunch in getting more vaccinations for the people of India, and what has the government done to try and procure more vaccinations for the people?
Actually, if we talk about the vaccination, yes, India being a major, it's one of the largest vaccine producers across the globe. And certainly the vaccine drive has not gone so well. The rollout of vaccination done 4 months back till now, if we talk about the figures, 135 million population has received the first dose, and only 7 million people have received both the doses. And this is around less than 10% of the total Indian population. But certainly we are having the Russian Sputnik coming down, and we are having more of Covishield and Covaxin, the Indian vaccines and the AstraZeneca vaccine. So both are being now, lately over last 10 days, the vaccination rollouts have come out on a much larger that I can issue. And it is being done for the mass public. And I personally believe over the next 1 month, more than, I think, 40% of the population will be vaccinated. Yeah. And the expected is that by August 2021, we should have more than our 70% population vaccinated, more than 18 years of age. So we are hopeful, but let's see how the drive goes. Initially, actually in the initial phase, there was more of a resistance from the population itself to get vaccinated because of the we can not being aware and so much of negativity across the media about the vaccines being projected. So this was another reason why people did not get themselves vaccinated. Even the healthcare workers, they did not go in for the vaccines. Less than 50% of the nurses, especially the doctors, were almost more than 80% vaccinated, but less than 50% of the nursing and the paramedics were vaccinated. Yeah. When full 100% free of cost vaccination drive being done by the government for the healthcare workers. So that is lack of awareness also.
That's a critical point there, and I wanted to find out more about that. Have you seen that this particular wave, this second wave, has prompted more people to have interest in the vaccine? Because the challenge of vaccine hesitation, I think, is global. There are people who have their concerns or are holding off on getting vaccinated, even though they may have access to it. Have you seen a change since you have been battling the current outbreak?
Certainly, this change is huge. Enormous changes there in the people's behavior. Now people are just running here and there. Now, personally, we believe that there are more of hoarding because people want to get the vaccine. And now what the hue and cry being made around the world is because the number of people who want to get vaccinated is much more than the number of vaccines being provided by the government daily.
Okay.
So yes, people now they are seeing the second wave, and this is certainly more deadlier than the first wave. Yeah. And they do want to get vaccinated because now people are more aware of that being vaccinated, the if you get affected, the intensity is much less. The effects of COVID itself are much
Worse,
lesser in the vaccinated people. It's in a much milder form. So,
And
I think
what's the vaccine uptake like on your end, Dr. Lopa?
Yeah, we have taken the Covishield.
Yeah. And people are open to getting the vaccine there, or there's some level of hesitancy as well?
No, I think it's when it was very the new that with the remote areas patients, they were very much confused that they will take or not. But now I think there is a very good motivation, and everyone is trying to get vaccine as early as possible. So this is a very good thing. Because in our country now what's happening that we have a festival, Eid festival.
Yes.
So this time we are a bit worried about, because this week we have found the Indian variant of coronavirus, and it's detected in our Evercare hospital, Dhaka. So I think so in an effort to contain a surge in new COVID cases, so this Bangladesh government announced this complete lockdown.
Oh, wow. So how long is the lockdown going to continue for?
Now for next 1 week, and then a new declaration will come.
Okay. Let's talk about your areas of specialization, working within the COVID-19 unit. How the disease is presenting itself now, and also taking into consideration what we know now, that it's a systemic disease versus a respiratory disease. What are we still seeing very severe forms? What's the difference in treatment in the hospitals?
Yeah, the thing is a difference. Actually the COVID-19 is new disease to all of us, because last year for 1 year we are known to this new thing. Actually, the thing is the difference between last year and this year. What I found in my ICU, that the younger patient, like mid-age, these patients are getting more affected, and also childs, pregnant women. So this is a very different from last year. So and also patients are coming very, like they are hypoxic, they didn't know everything, and sudden very severe critically ill patient admitted in our ICU. So at the last moment they are coming. So this is very much like patient comes and we have to give the patient in ventilator, then the survival rate is very low. So if the patient comes earlier to us, then we can do more. But in Bangladesh now what's happening, the lots of patients are getting home care services and they are recovering. And this is a very good news, because previously patients were like, they were not used to like online consultation, but this time they are actually motivated by this thing, that no, we will not rush to the hospital, and they are keeping like pulse oximetry in their home, and they are talking to doctors, and when to come they are asking to us. And there is a problem we faced this time in the mid April. Actually, there was an insufficient supply, like oxygen. So this thing we saw this time, that the oxygen and patients are requiring high flow oxygen. So patients are coming with very low saturation, and we are giving them oxygen. Most of the patients getting cured, but getting recovered by giving oxygen only. But in treatment, if you say that anything new, anything new, like this time we are not giving that type of antibiotics. I can say that last year we have given antibiotics, but this time we are not using that. And patients are getting only with paracetamol, oxygen, and like blood thinner, like enoxaparin. So we are giving, and a steroid. Yeah. So these are the in our treatment protocol, and we are not using convalescent plasma. Last year we used a lot convalescent plasma. This time we are not using that much. And I think,
Have you seen a difference in the age of the persons who are admitted?
Yes. And that's in the first wave, we saw that the elderly patient, like the patients who are comorbid and elderly, they got more affected. But this time I saw that the mid age, like 35 to 45 or like 40, between 40, lots of young patients came. And we got the pregnant women, and they are coming they are severely hypoxic, and these patients we have to admit in ICU, and we have to give an immediate treatment to them. So this is the main difference, I think, from the first wave.
And for you, Dr. Sodhi, what's the demographics or differences with this
Younger
second wave?
population is certainly affected, right? And we are seeing more of pediatric population.
Wow.
Even maybe 1 year, 2 years, they are coming, lot of patients. And
Severe?
population with no comorbidities, actually, as Dr. Lopa has also highlighted. In the 30 to 40 years, many people coming. And what we have seen in this particular wave is another thing was previously seen only in the children. That is the multi-system inflammatory involvement. We term it as MIS. And wherein beyond the respiratory involvement, there is lots of other organ involvements, including the heart, like there is viral myocarditis is there, the heart functioning decreases. The GI symptoms, the gastrointestinal symptoms are very much seen. And we are coming up with lots of neurological complications coming up in the COVID patient, which were much less in the first wave, what we have observed.
That's interesting.
And this is a major concern. In the younger population, more of the systemic involvements, and they even linger on up to 6 weeks, 8 weeks beyond the COVID, the active COVID. So this is really alarming.
Yeah, that's absolutely concerning. Now, and the recovery rate when they're younger?
The recovery rates, yes, younger population, it comes at level 2. Level 2 is what we define when the patient doesn't need actually any respiratory advanced things like the ventilators or the supports. Patients who are on oxygen and maintaining the saturation levels, we term them as level 2 patients. And if they reach to us earlier, like up to 10 days of illness, yes, they do. But sometimes out of lack of awareness, people keep on managing at home, and they reach to us at a later stage. Beyond 12 days, usually what we have seen is the recovery rate decreases a lot. That is when actually the complications start occurring, the involvement, respiratory system is hugely involved, and patients actually land up into the level 3, wherein there is some sort of respiratory assistance in the form of the HFNO or the ventilatory supports. Actually, in the second wave, we have come down on the use of HFNOs, that is the high frequency nasal cannulas, which utilizes lots of oxygen. We are using more of the non-invasive ventilators rather than the HFNOs, which was the vice versa in the first wave because of the oxygen scarcity.
Yeah, the high flow oxygen. Yeah. Okay, and one more question for you, Dr. Lopa, because you mentioned it very briefly. You said part of what you're seeing this time, over a year after the start of the pandemic, is dealing with long-haul COVID-19 patients, people who are still exhibiting symptoms. Shed some light on that for us. What's happening?
Actually, the patients were coming. I must echo with Dr. Sodhi that the patients are coming late. This is a very alarming thing. When the patient comes late to us, the thing is the patient already gets the complications and multi-organ involvement. Then we try our hardest level, but the thing is actually at first we try in non-invasive ventilation like BiPAP and high flow. We prone the patients actually, but when the patients come and there's invasive ventilation required, then there is nothing to do. But a good thing, if if we are this time, the thing happened last year, the mortality rate of ventilator patients, mechanical ventilator patients was higher. I think in my hospital also we have extubated patients, and the patients were young patient and they recovered because the patient is came in the severe critical moment, but the patient was not comorbid. So the comorbidity is a very, very important thing, like in treating this type of critical patients. But the post-COVID complication, I must say, the patients are coming with the lung fibrosis. The patients are coming like respiratory complications, and I must say that Dr. Sodhi highlighted it, the neurological complication also, and the patients are coming like in cardiac problems like myocarditis. This is very common, and the patients are having chest pain, and suddenly they are also recovered from our hospital. Then again patient came with the complication. So these things are happening a lot.
How long after their recovery are they coming back with these symptoms? Because these are people who had COVID-19, recovered.
After 10 to 15 days, some are coming, and some are also after, and the thing is, some patients are going home also very low oxygen. We discharge because long stay in hospital, whenever patient is stable, we discharge some patients with oxygen also, but the patients are coming with hemoptysis, like then the patient has chest pain, chronic cough also some patients had. So these patients are coming within like 10 to 15 days. Some patients came to us after 1 month also. Patient recovered, patient after the follow-up. We advise the patient to come after 1 month for the follow-up. Yeah, so some patients came to us, and we have done the HRCT of chest, and we found that the lung fibrosis and the patient's bronchiectasis. So these patients are coming to us. And yes, I must say we are not dealing with pediatric group, but I know from my colleagues that the pediatric groups are also involved in this pandemic. This group of people are affected also. So what I think that this variant is something different, this variant from the previous wave, I must say that. And you can't know, the patient are becoming hypoxic, but he's walking, he's talking, everything is okay. Sudden respiratory distress, there is no fever, no cough, they are coming with distress and desaturating the patient. So lots of patients in emergency, we are dealing with that.
That's scary.
I must say one thing that I must say to Dr. I'm highlighting actually, Dr. Sodhi, that India is doing tremendous job. They are fighting, and all the doctors, because I have a very good connection of Indian Society of Critical Care Medicine, they are working not from like frontliner, they are working virtually, they are doing meetings, they are doing contained COVIDs and all things. So I must salute to them that they are doing more than they can. They are not sleeping, they are not eating also, I think. And yes, frustration is a very, I'm worried about it, because many doctors are getting frustrated. So I think we all should be cheered, like, no, we will win.
And that leads me to a question for Dr. Sodhi. Can you explain, with India being one of the world's vaccine diplomats, what has the support been to India from the global community?
Can you please repeat the question?
Sorry?
Sorry?
Oh, I stated that India is one of the vaccine diplomats of the world and has basically supported the world in getting procurement for some vaccinations, especially to developing countries. What has the support been like to India in this present moment from the global community?
In the present moment, actually, over the last 15 days, there's a huge help coming around from the global community. We are really thankful to them. Around 20 days back, the media created lots of hue and cry. Yes, there was oxygen scarcity, and we had lots of oxygen inflow from our friends around the world. UK, France, UAE, Kuwait, and even Singapore. We got lots of liquid medical oxygen going in. We are getting oxygen concentrators from them, from across, from Canada especially. Lots of medical aids are coming up, lots of equipment, and everybody is actually, they have opened their hearts for India, that yes, they are ready to help out India in any form. We are getting lots of help in the form of medical equipments especially, and the oxygen, which is now, I personally believe, because of the efforts on the government's part, now we are not short of oxygen, because they have created an oxygen digital tracking system, wherein a central oxygen control system has been set up, and the oxygen supply is being rationalized across the country. And especially the oxygen supply, there was immense help from our friends around the world. And we are really thankful to everyone that yes, they have come for our help at this hour of crisis, but we are surely going to fight this back. And as Dr. Lopa said, I would like to highlight, yes, I being a member of Intensive Care Society of Critical Care Medicine in India, we are on the ISCCM level, we are doing lots of contained COVID. We are creating awareness amongst the masses on the public media, through social medias, televisions, radios, and also through Facebook and Twitters, and of awareness campaigns and the academic meetings being held virtually, as Dr. Lopa, she's a co-partner for all our, most of our meets. So we are creating awareness amongst the South American countries and the Southeast Asian countries across the world. We are doing lots of it, and we are certainly getting the.
And let's allow us to bring it back home. So we are, I want to say cautiously optimistic of how we're doing at this phase in our pandemic. But of course, the medical professionals, they're all concerned of going back into that phase where we face an outbreak. What's your advice to people, to the health professionals who are leading the charge, as to what a country like Belize can do to prevent entering into a second wave? Let's start with you, Dr. Sodhi.
Well, you have to follow the COVID appropriate behavior. There is no shortcut. Distancing is a must. We have to follow, we have to contain ourselves actually, rather than asking the government to make the containment zones. We have to contain ourselves. We have to maintain the social distancing, we have to have an appropriate mask wearing behaviors, and we have to isolate ourselves. Once we have the symptoms, the isolation has to be there. We cannot just go about moving here and there. And the government has set up a teleconsult portal, eSanjeevaniOPD.in, wherein we can consult. Any Indian citizen can consult, have a teleconsult, and we are open to that. Even the ISCCM, Indian Society of Critical Care Medicine, has opened the e-portals for the consultations, wherein any can consult a critical care physician or a general physician. So we need to go ahead. We have to face the reality that yes, we have the COVID symptoms and we can have COVID. It's not like that everybody has a false sense of, no, COVID cannot happen to me. It's just a normal viral fever. That is what the general public says. But see, look at the doctors, paramedics. They are just running mad. Over the last 1 year. They don't have good night's sleeps. They are not sleeping. They're just running here and there for your health. So you have to come forward. You have to say that yes, we might be having COVID, so we have to contain ourselves, we have to isolate ourselves, and that is where we can put a break on the infectivity. And that is where, as a responsible citizen, we can participate.
Important information there. And for you, Dr. Lopa? We still have her with us? Seems we're no longer.
lost her signal.
Yeah, I think
I
she
think
may,
we lost her.
we may have lost that connection. But we do appreciate both you, Dr. Lopa, and you, Dr. Sodhi, joining us today, letting us understand a bit more as to what's happening on the ground in India and Bangladesh. And of course, we wish you the best of luck in being able to continue this fight. And thank you for sharing your lessons with us as well.
Thank you, friends. And actually, I do feel and I do pray that we do not face the third wave.
Yes.
And with the immense efforts being put by the government of India and the public, actually it's now a consensus effort being put in. We are better prepared to face the third wave, but I do that the time does not come. And we all do not meet on the virtual platform personally.
All right. Thank you once again, and stay safe. All right. And with that, we're going to go ahead and take a break. We just put the perspective of the second wave of COVID-19 in India into perspective. Really interesting conversation there. Yeah.
And it's a grim situation that's happening right now in India. And we see the different cremation sites being built because they're running out of spaces for in the crematories. And so definitely what will happen in the next coming weeks for India is going to be critically important. Because what happens at one part of the world affects us as well. So this is something that we have to fight together, and it's a global fight that we need to engage in.
What stands out the most to me is how they both identify that they're seeing younger patients being more severe. I think Dr. Sodhi said she's seeing 1-year-olds coming in with severe symptoms. So the population that's getting severely ill are younger people. And even more so, I believe they also noted the fact that the types of symptoms that people are presenting with, it's not just respiratory, it's looking at neurological conditions and gastrointestinal conditions. So, you know, I think the purpose of having this perspective being shared this morning is that we must be reminded that